Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a review on The Kitchen, which is a 2023 futuristic movie set in London. In this future, the gap between the rich and the poor is wider than ever, and obviously housing is an issue. One of the few places that the have-nots of society, the working class, the people who are not wealthy can afford to live in is a social housing estate called The Kitchen. The Kitchen is like a small town and has businesses there, people live in their families, everything. But the powers that be um, want to claim the property and force people out, obviously to refurbish it and upgrade it and sell it at a far expensive price than the people are currently paying. And so they resort to cutting of their power supply, their water supply, and occasionally violent raids. But the people of The Kitchen have devised a method to help keep themselves as safe as they can. So the people who live on the topmost floor are like watchdogs, and they watch out for trouble, and then they clang their pots and pans together when they sight the police coming, or the armed forces or whatever. When they sight them coming, they clang the pots and pans so people on the ground floor can run to their rooms and lock the doors and stay safe. In this um in this housing estate, we meet one of our main characters, Easy. Easy is a young man in maybe his early 30s, and he hates it in the kitchen. It is obvious from the moment we meet him that he hates living there, and he doesn't have the same solidarity and loyalty to the place that many of the other occupants do. And so he is saving up his money to leave to one of the upgraded housing estates, right? And so we see him working and doing whatever at work to sell and meet his target and make money. And he works at this futuristic funeral home where people who cannot afford burial grounds are cremated and turned to, I think, trees for their families to visit until they are relocated to wherever they are relocated to. And so it's while he's working at this place that he comes across our second main character, Benji. Benji is a young boy of maybe 13 or 12, 13. And Benji has just lost his mom, and he's the only one at her funeral. And so he gets Easy, the older man, gets an alert for this funeral, and we see that there's recognition on his face when he gets the alert of the person being buried. So he proceeds to the funeral room or whatever, the chapel where she's being buried in quotes, cremated, and he locks eyes with the young man, the young boy Benji, and there's curiosity in the young boy's eyes, like he's wondering who this older man is. And so later on, Benji waits for him at the close of work and kind of confronts him about his mother, asking if he knows his mother. But Easy refuses, right? And we see that obviously Benji is disappointed because he thought that his father would show up. Obviously he does not know his father, and he thought that his father would show up for his mother's burial. But Easy is adamant that he's not his father. We can see that Easy is a bit of an asshole, right? In the movie we can tell that Easy is a bit of an asshole. He's like, he grew up in this dog eats dog world, dog eat dog mentality, and he's just out for himself. And even when the young boy Benji asks to ride with him on his bike because he has a motorbike, he refuses, right? And we can tell that this is someone that just cares about only themselves, right? Eventually he comes back and I think talks to the guy, lets him ride the bike, and drops him off where, and bids him goodbye. So Benji, the young boy, goes back to his home, to the apartment that he shares with his mother, and it's obviously empty now. He has no other family member and he's lonely. Okay, he's the only one in this apartment, no one cares for him, and so he's lonely. He opens up a present that his mother had wrapped up for him, and it is a bicycle, and he rides it over to the kitchen. Prior to this time, he had asked Easy, the older man, where he lived, and Easy mentioned the kitchen, right? And so Benji rides his bicycle over to the kitchen, hoping to meet with Izzy, hoping to meet with Izzy. But he realizes that it's such a big place, and he's not gonna find him. It's like going to a town and asking for someone. It's a big estate, so he doesn't find him. But eventually, he's found by a gang of young men and women. This gang is responsible for coordinated attacks on the powers that be, taking food supplies from them and bringing it back to their housing estate. And so this gang, the leader of the gang takes Benji over under his wings and gives him a place to stay. Obviously, we can tell that this young boy really is in need of company, is in need of belonging, and so he accepts the offer to stay with the gang people, whatever. The next day, the gang people involve Benji in some mischief where they're, slinging rocks at the police drones that are monitoring the area. And after that, they go downstairs, and it's when they're downstairs that Benji meets Izzy again, or Izzy rather notices Benji and calls him from the group, like, what are you doing here? And he told him that he came to look for him, right? Izzy is uncomfortable with him hanging around those people, and he's scolding him, and he's like, what is it to you, whatever. While they're talking, the people upstairs start to clang their pots, and so Izzy just flees, right? He leaves this young man behind. So we can already see that this is a pattern. He is someone who is just out for himself, and the young man runs after him, right? He runs after Izzy, and eventually they get to his room and lock the door behind them. But the police have already infiltrated the place, and those who are not solidly behind their iron doors are beaten, assaulted, dragged out of the place, and harassed. And so that is Benji's first encounter with the assault that takes place on the kitchen. Izzy tells Benji that he's gonna get into trouble hanging around the people he's currently hanging around, and Benji tells him that he's gonna stop only if Izzy lets him crash at his place for 2 days. And Izzy reluctantly agrees, or stating that he's gonna leave the place soon, so 2 days must be 2 days, right? So he's like, he's planning to leave the kitchen, move out of the kitchen, so 2 days has to be 2 days. Eventually, within the 2 days that they stay together, they begin to get to know each other, and Izzy is reluctantly getting fond of Benji. We can obviously tell that he's his son, right? We can obviously tell that he had something to do with the boy's mother long ago, right? We can tell, even though he does not want to admit it to himself. So reluctantly, he gets fond of this guy, and when time comes for him to pay for his single room occupancy in this luxury condos or whatever, luxury building, he asks the computer, right, that if he can pay, if the place can house more than one person, and the computer is like, you have to buy 2 rooms if you want to house 2 people, right? So obviously he doesn't have the money for that, and so he buys his single room apartment and abandons the young boy to go live in this place. Benji eventually realizes that he has been left behind by Izzy, and he's obviously heartbroken by this, but he goes on back to the gang. He returns to the gang, and they welcome him back. Eventually, we see Izzy in his new apartment, in his new luxury apartment, and we can tell that he feels bad about leaving Benji behind, and even misses somewhat the camaraderie of the kitchen. The kitchen is subject to yet another raid, and in this raid, the chief kitchener is killed. The chief kitchener is a father figure of sorts that a lot of the occupants of the estate look up to. He has like a podcast thingy, I don't know how to explain it, a microphone thingy that connects to every room in the estate, and so they're used to his voice. He's a voice of reason, he's a voice of encouragement through the raids and everything. But in this most recent raid, the Kitchener is attacked by the police and killed. And so Easy finds out when they bring his body to where he works, and a lot of the occupants of the place come to pay their respects. Easy goes to pay his respects before hurrying back to the estate, the kitchen, to search for Benji. Because the chief Kitchener has been killed, a lot of people's morale has been brought down, and a lot of them flee the kitchen. But the gang decides to retaliate. They take Benji along with them as they go to attack the families and the people who they believe sent the police to them. Benji cannot go through with the violence that the gang members are meting out on the people that they believe are responsible for the attack on the kitchen, and so he flees the place. He arrives just as another raid is ongoing, and he flees into the room. He goes to Easy's former room, and Benji and Easy meet in this room again once more, and they lock the door behind them. Benji asks Easy, if he is his father. After Easy kind of apologizes for abandoning him, Benji asks Easy if he is his father, and Easy sort of nods. And then Easy asks him if he would like him to be. And he says, yeah, let's see how it goes, right? All this while, there's a policeman banging on their door. And just before the screen goes blank, we hear the sound of the door budging under the repeated weight of this policeman, and the credits roll. Altogether, I found it a very interesting movie for what was obviously not so high budget a movie. It shows that we do not really need a lot of money to tell good stories. I don't know how much the budget was, but it's not so high tech like a lot of futuristic movies tend to be, but still it told an interesting story. So that will be all for today's video. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.